You know, I want to thank my colleague from California for giving me this time. It is a very interesting time in this pivot to Asia, and as we look at the U.S.-Asia relationship, as we look at the opportunities and the challenges, listening to the opening testimony, the goal is twofold: stability in the region and prosperity in the region. And certainly that is to our advantage. Having had the privilege to travel to India with the president, and just kind of up front looking at the dual interest on both sides. Clearly, I think at the executive level, the Prime Minister and the President understand the importance of the relationship. I think the Prime Minister, as he is looking at an ambitious agenda in India, is looking for reliable partners, and clearly is looking to the West. Certainly is building the relationship with Japan, but also increasingly is looking at the importance of the relationship with the United States. And I think the President understands the opportunities to open up the Indian markets here, and then also the importance of India geopolitically and strategically in stabilizing South Asia, in helping bring some stability to the South China Sea and so forth. I think we make a mistake if we just look at these relationships in a bilateral way, though, because these are really trilateral and multilateral relationships. When we think about the U.S.-India relationship, we should also think about the U.S.-India-Japan relationship, because, again, it's in our interest as allies. Certainly, India is looking at these relationships in a multilateral way. I think we make a mistake if we just look at India as picking the United States or China. Again, all these countries have major trading relationships with China as well, and again, I think we approach these in a multilateral relationship. I'd be curious, as we look at this growing relationship with India, as we've set the framework in moving forward with another 10-year bilateral defense treaty, looking forward to continuing progress on a bilateral investment treaty with India and so forth. There's real opportunities here in the U.S.-India space to protect our interests, but also, again, to bring stability to the region. Maybe we'll start with Mr. Denmark. Your thoughts on this?
Thank you, Congressman. I completely agree with the tremendous potential that there is in the U.S.-India relationship. I actually happened to be in New Delhi when Xi Jinping was visiting and got to see what a problematic relationship that India has with China. Clearly, Prime Minister Modi is seeking to enhance his relationships with all the major countries in Asia. So he's had important visits with President Obama, with Xi Jinping, but also with Putin, with Abe, and with Abbott down in Australia. But I think clearly the United States occupies a special place in Prime Minister Modi's outlook. And these bilateral defense agreement, the investment agreement that you mentioned, I think, have tremendous potential both in themselves and what we can work with them, but also the precedents that they set. That the bilateral agreements that we've already put together with India, that Ash Carter pushed when he was the deputy and now he's secretary, I think have tremendous potential to enhance our defense technology cooperation capabilities, potentially our interoperability, our planning, and because we share so many interests, especially in East Asia with India. On the investment side, encouraging India to look more outward and as an exporter, to be a more integrated member of the international economy, I think is of vital importance. And I would just add, finally, you mentioned the trilateral and quadrilateral agreements. Aspects of this relationship. Prime Minister Modi had very interesting and very close engagements with Prime Minister Abe and with Abbott in Australia. And I think there's real potential for that quadrilateral dynamic that I hope in the coming years we'll see really getting right out of that.
And I'm glad you mentioned the new Secretary of Defense, Ash Carter. I think we've got a great team in place that understands the complexity of the region as well as the opportunity. Obviously, the Secretary of Defense understands the region and spent a lot of time there. Our new ambassador to India, Rich Verma, certainly understands the complexity and the opportunities there as well. Mr. Goodman, you talked about kind of a basis of economic stability and economic prosperity. In the few seconds that I have left, would you like to go ahead and expand on that?
Sure. Again, same basic point, which is there's huge potential in the U.S.-India relationship in the economic front. It's been, frankly, underexploited over a long period of time. I think that's for a number of reasons. I think one of them is that India has not, until Prime Minister Modi in recent times, had someone committed to the internal economic reform that Modi seems to be clearly committed to, and I think that's a precondition to a stronger relationship. Then there are the direct bilateral processes, as you mentioned. The bilateral investment treaty, I think, has great potential. I think it's going to be a challenging negotiation, but I do think it's something that could provide a real foundation. There are a number of outstanding concerns, particularly of our U.S. businesses in India, with foreign investment restrictions, localization requirements, intellectual property problems with patent protection, and so forth. Modi has addressed some of those. There's been some improvement on foreign direct investment in the railways and other infrastructure sectors, and I think that's quite an important sort of down payment on an improvement. I also would just endorse the point that regionally there's a big opportunity. You know, frankly, India has not been as engaged in certainly in regional economic affairs to the extent that I think would be good for all of us. And they're not a member of APEC, which is the fault of both sides, really, for their not being in there. But they've also been sort of lukewarm about some of these regional endeavors. And I actually think that there would be, if they were willing to invest in the more greater openness in their own economy, they could make a great contribution to rulemaking in principle in these regional arrangements.
Great. And I would just close with this. As co-chair of the Caucus on India and Indian Americans, which is the largest country caucus in Congress, I think I can speak for members on both sides of the aisle that we view the U.S.-India relationship in a bilateral way and see some of the opportunities there. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Rohrbach.